guys, welcome back to A-Level Lessons Online. Alright, welcome to our part 12b, the second part of our two-part series on TNCs, or your transnational corporations. Okay, this part we're going to be looking at what are their benefits and costs, as well as the impacts, correct, that TNCs have on either the host or their home economies, alright. So this is going to be a very, very dry video, right? It's definitely going to require you to actually possibly watch this video in parts, right? Because it is indeed going to be very dry. So I've tried to keep all my points very, very concise and straight to the point, right? So that you just really get what is necessary when it comes to essay writing. Okay, and then the rest of it is really up to you to explain and then substantiate with examples. Alright, so this video yes, it's going to be dry, so do take your time to watch it. Alright, go watch it a few times if you need to, or maybe pause it once you're halfway through and then come back to it another day, so that you guys don't get oversaturated, okay, with the amount of points that has to be covered in this part of TNCs, alright? So let's just jump right in. Alright, so firstly we're going to be looking at the impacts for TNCs. Okay, so we're looking at impacts that are for TNCs. So what are their benefits and their costs to a TNC by producing outside of their home country. So firstly, you realize that for TNCs, one of the benefits, one of the positive impacts would be that they can actually benefit from lower cost of labor. So abundant labor source is actually available in their host countries, such as LDCs, right, whereby they focus a lot of their production plants in the lower skilled related jobs. Okay, and this is always found at a lower cost, right, due to the lower education. Hence, the people don't really fight for higher wages. So this is definitely going to be beneficial to a TNC because it allows them to not only reap significant cost benefits, but also reduces their opportunity costs, right? So they can actually focus their resources into other areas of the firm, right? For instance, research and development, so as to ensure that across the board, they still see an overall increase in their demand for goods and services. The next thing will be this thing called economies of scale, not economics of scale, sorry. So this is actually economies. Right, so economies of scale, right, for those of you guys who learn econs, you already know very clearly what economies of scale are. Essentially, they are basically cost benefits that a big firm can actually reap as a result of being large, okay, as a result of having a large operation structure. So TNCs can actually form collaborations with other TNCs to enjoy a shared cost. Okay, when they form all these collusions, right, or collaborations, it actually allows them to share, right, the overall cost, right? Especially, for instance, if you look at areas such as Silicon Valley, the costs, okay, the economies of scale, they are very, very huge, okay, because most of the costs, things like transport, things like knowledge, are all being shared amongst all the TNCs operating. Not only that, large-scale operations located globally in a variety of different markets also allow the TNC to actually reap rewards, right? Because they are able to produce on such a large scale and they can produce basically everywhere, they'll definitely be able to reap a lot of significant economies of scale, right? If you're interested in learning more about economies of scale, I will leave a link in the top right corner of the screen. You can go and check it out on what EOS is all about. Right. So the next part is that the TNCs can actually avoid strict domestic environmental regulations. So because the thing is that most TNCs tend to originate from developed countries, and developed countries have very, very fixed policies when it comes to environmental related issues. So the thing is that when it comes to your less developed countries, they are basically not going to be as strict in terms of your environmental regulations, so that they can actually attract these TNCs to come in and operate. Right, this allows TNCs to produce without having to take into account the environmental considerations. So it can definitely be a benefit and a cost depending on perspective. We'll explore more of this later on. But essentially, for TNCs, it's very, very good, right? Because you don't have to worry about how much you are polluting the environment. You can just produce as much as you want to reap the maximum amount of profits. So this is going to be very, very common amongst your LDCs, which definitely do not have all these environmental regulations in place. Okay, the next one will be that TNCs can actually tap onto potential markets in other countries. So what happens is that when TNCs they are operating globally, they can actually extend their sphere of influence, okay, their overall market share, beyond the size of just their individual national market. Right, so what happens is that local market in host countries can be a potential market for these TNCs, especially for those with larger populations like India, China. These are actually huge opportunities for all these TNCs to actually tap on, and it allows them to not only increase their overall influence over the entire world economy, but also allows them to definitely see a rise in their overall revenue, right? Because they can tap onto greater demand from these emerging economies. Right, so those are basically the main positive impacts or the benefits, okay, that a TNC stands to reap when they're operating outside of their home country. So what are the negative impacts then? So firstly, is definitely that they're going to be more vulnerable to disruptions in terms of their operations, right? Because they have got operations located globally all over the world. Okay, if let's say in a certain country there is, let's say, things like social conflicts or labor unrest, okay, or either that a change in government policies, that one part of the entire supply chain is going to be affected. Alright, and this can be it can be like a domino effect, right? Because if let's say the production gets affected, right, definitely you won't be able to actually retail them. You won't be able to distribute your goods and services. Hence, there won't be consumers who will be buying them, and you'll see an overfall in your demand. So this is why TNC is actually very, very vulnerable to all these unstable conditions, okay, that can just fluctuate, okay. It can actually occur in any country at any point in time, really depending on the political climate and the economic climate of that country itself. So this is something that TNCs have to look out for, okay, when they are diverse so wide. Okay, it's a good and a bad thing, right? Because of this vulnerable situation that they have actually placed themselves in, right? Next one will be when there's fluctuations in currency exchange rates. So unstable exchange rates can also result in an increase in transaction costs at different parts of the production circuit. So this is actually quite similar, right? If let's say a country decides to suddenly appreciate their currency, right, what happens is that now their currency is relatively more expensive than yours. So this could actually result in, let's say, increased costs in certain areas of the supply chain, right? That could definitely happen. So the movement of goods and services may also see increased costs, right? Which is why you realize you always need to pay for shipping fees. Let's say if you're buying a good as a consumer, right? So think of it as a producer standpoint, how much more of these shipping fees you're going to have to pay, or either that these taxes and these changes in the exchange rate, they need to account for when you're shipping from one country all the way to the other side of the world, right? These are things that TNCs are very, very vulnerable to as well. And lastly would be that they are definitely going to have to form more intricate, and more complex operations, and coordination when it comes to operating on a global scale. Naturally, TNCs, because they are all located almost everywhere globally, there is going to be so much that they need to handle, right? Which is why we have learned from our intra and interfirm networks, right, that they have got things like HQ, and then they've got their regional HQs as well. So these are going to be the ones that helps them to manage operations globally. But this task here of managing a globally integrated operation is definitely going to be more complex and very, very demanding, especially for those in the higher executive and higher management positions found in your headquarters. So this will definitely require greater management skill and knowledge to overcome such barriers, and hence could result in increased unintended costs. Meaning to say, right, that let's say if you need to actually hire higher skilled workers, to be able to manage such operations, it can definitely lead to higher wages, right, which is why it's actually an increased cost that actually will go out. But this could be unintended. It is kind of like a no choice situation, and it's definitely something as a result of TNCs being very, very complex and having this very intertwined relationship all across the world, right? So the next one will be when we look at your positive impacts on your host countries. So we're no longer looking at TNCs, we're looking at the actual economy that they may be operating in, that is outside of the country that they were originally born. So for the host countries, for example, countries such as Africa, the entire continent, for example, in countries within Africa, other than China, those countries have a lot of production-based driven production plants essentially. So what happens is that this can actually provide a source of employment. So the presence of TNCs will provide job opportunities for the host countries. So it's beneficial for people who are suffering from poverty in LDCs, as it provides increased source of income as compared to, let's say, like the agricultural sector, the primary sector, right? And this will definitely increase living standards. So source of employment does not always have to be that people can now, let's say, go and do mining, or they can now be working in a production plant. So for your LDCs, it's very, very beneficial. But we can also look at it from a developed country point of view, right? When TNCs come in to operate in your developed countries or your NIEs, your NICs, what happens is that they set up regional HQs, they set up R&D facilities, and all of these also provides jobs for the locals. So this is something that you can see that is definitely very, very beneficial, is that it actually helps to reduce unemployment rates in a lot of their host countries, which is something that all governments always aim to achieve as one of their macroeconomic goals. Alright. So the next one will be when you're looking at increased investments and foreign currency to the country. So because TNCs will invest in their own operations in the host countries, this investment will definitely aid in generating economic growth, right? It is all part of econs, when you actually learn that an increase in investments will definitely lead to an increase in your short-term economic growth. You realize that this is why TNCs are also beneficial, because they actually bring in a lot of this thing we call it hot money flows. It is basically a short-term investment, and they also bring in a lot of capital. So when they bring all these types of investments, it actually helps to stimulate the economy and actually spurs economic growth. Alright, so this is just something that you guys may want to take note of, your understanding on how economic growth is derived from investments. Alright, next thing is that it also helps to provide education and training for the local people, hence enhancing their skills. So it improves the level of skill and expertise of the workforce by transferring skills and knowledge through training and education. So in the long run, LDCs can learn operating styles and managerial skills from these TNCs. So when you're looking at the host countries, right, because naturally, especially for those less developed countries, the level of knowledge is definitely going to be much lower due to the lack of technology, lack of internet, lack of a lot of various factors. But when these TNCs come in, they actually bring with them this skill set that they had learned, right, from their own home economies, and actually pass it on to the people, right, the locals, in terms of, let's say, training programs, or job stimulation programs. So these will actually help to boost the overall level of skills of the people, whereby instead of just knowing how to, let's say, farm or do very, very basic services, they can now operate machinery, they can now use technology as well to help them in their jobs, right? These are all skills that have been upgraded for this set of people who may previously had actually lacked education and proper training. Next one will be a transfer of knowledge and technology. Similar point, TNCs will actually transfer technology across countries, both developed countries and LDCs, especially the capital-intensive economies, right? The machinery that TNCs require is not going to be just magically in the host economy that they want it in, right? They have to definitely bring it with them when they're setting up their plants, when they're setting up their facilities. So definitely this would actually lead to a transfer of technology, and the transfer of knowledge is basically like part 3. Alright, knowledge is going to be transferred. So this actually helps also in achieving sustainable development, and the creation of a more interconnected world, right? If you guys remember from your sustainable development goals, it is definitely necessary. One of the goals is to ensure that DCs, your developed countries, actually help less developed countries in terms of transferring of technology as well as knowledge to ensure that everyone is on the same level playing field. So this is definitely one of the very, very key components to why TNCs are beneficial, right? It's because they can actually help to stimulate this transference of technology, which can definitely help in the long run in terms of achieving your sustainable development. Alright, we're coming to the end very soon, so just hang on for a moment, right? Next, we're going to be looking at the negative impacts on the host countries. So definitely the first one is very obvious, right? You're going to definitely see exploitation of local labor forces, Due to the nature of jobs, locals may be poorly paid and they may need to work long hours. So working conditions may not always be conducive. So things like your sweatshops by Nike, Coca-Cola, go and search out what sweatshops are. It's a very, very horrible example. I mean, it's a good example in terms of showing the horrible standards, right, that certain TNCs actually enforce amongst or against or on the local people, right, as a need for them to actually increase the production. So because in certain less developed countries, right, when your labor force is actually working in all these production units in very, very low skilled jobs, the conditions usually aren't great, right, because the TNCs don't really actually care much for them, right? And so as a result, they actually may have to work not only long hours and at a very, very low pay, but in very, very horrible working conditions, right? So this is one of the issues when the local labor force is actually exploited. Next one will be when there's economic dependency on TNCs, right? So the smaller local economies may actually rely too much on TNCs as they are the only source of employment and income. So if the TNCs fail, or let's say they leave or they shut down, what happens is that the local economy become very, very vulnerable with no other source of revenue. So this is something that is very, very common when your less developed countries actually rely, right, on your developed countries' TNCs all coming to the country to operate. So they think that they are very, very stable now, they have got a good source of income, a good source of employment. But if all of a sudden this TNC chooses to move out, right, let's say they find that another country, they can operate the same thing but at a lower cost, then essentially your whole sector is just taken out. It's just gone, right? Your whole sector of this GDP. So as a result, this can leave your economy very, very vulnerable if this is to happen. And this is why we call it economic dependency, right? When the country is so dependent on your TNC to drive the economy, right? So this is also one risk that host countries tend to face. Okay, the next one is threats to local businesses and industries. This one is very, very obvious, right? When your TNCs actually come in, they compete with local firms and hence can result in your home industry actually contracting. It forces some local businesses out of business, which is very, very sad. Definitely not wise, okay, and not beneficial to any locals in the host country. Last one would be when there's insufficient attention to the protection of the environment. So like I mentioned just now, right, because TNCs are cost-oriented and they prioritize on profit maximization, they actually may not care much about the protection of the environment. So this can not only bring in negative externalities, right, can cause your climate change to be accelerated, cause global warming to come, but it can also cause health concerns amongst the locals, right? So essentially, when you've got TNCs operating, right, they definitely are going to increase the overall pollution levels. They're going to reduce a lot of your material-based living standards, which is not going to be beneficial. Not material-based, not going to be beneficial to the people, especially in the long run, when things like climate change comes into effect, right? When there's higher pollution levels, air pollution, water pollution, all of these are actually a subset and something that is brought about by TNCs operating, which will definitely harm your locals in the host economies. Alright, then what are some of the positive impacts on the home economies, so the home countries? So this one I won't really explain too much because I think it's very, very clear cut. So TNCs are definitely a means for a government to maintain a dominant world economic position in other expanding economies, right? Because the TNCs are operating there is definitely going to be that position that they are actually forming and the foundation that they are forming in the host country. Hence for the home economy, for the governments, is definitely they're going to be very happy, right? Because they can now have some sort of influence and a presence in other countries. So it also improves the country's balance of trade, definitely because of your increase in your amount of goods and services that are being traded, right, across the world. And TNCs can also earn a lot via the foreign exchange, which benefit home economies when there are repatriation of profits. When the profits actually come back to your country, because of things like exchange rates, difference in exchange rates, it will actually come in and at a much higher rate. So this actually allows you to benefit from increased revenue and income in your overall real GDP. On the other hand, the negative impacts on your home countries, right, firstly is that jobs are lost due to structural changes in the economy. So naturally, when a lot of your jobs are actually located, we'll look at this part in the last part actually, the last point. But essentially what's happening here is that when there are structural changes in the economy, let's say you're moving from the primary sector to the tertiary sector all of a sudden, a lot of people are going to not only face skills mismatch and jobs mismatch, but a lot of them will also face this structural change, right, which a lot of them may not be used to. So it can cause a lot of unintended consequences on the economy. Next one is that home countries can also see a decrease in trades, because they're exporting jobs, investing money overseas, so this can result in a decrease in products made in their home country, which can be exported. So then this may also result in a fall in their growth in the short run, because of a fall in their overall exports that's being exported out. And lastly is that TNCs are also a major cause of unequal distribution of wealth, right? Naturally, when we move a variety of productive or low-skilled jobs out of the country, it leaves mostly the highly skilled and highly educated, highly specialized occupations for which only the wealthy and highly educated locals can take position in. So this would mean that the lesser skilled, the not as educated people, they won't be able to have much job opportunities within their own home country, and this can lead to greater unemployment and can lead to greater loss in terms of living standards, right? So this is something that can actually happen. It will actually widen the income gap because the rich will have the jobs, they will continue to get richer, while the poor will still face poverty and they will have no jobs to actually help them boost their living standards at all. Alright, so that's actually all, okay, for this entire part. I know it's been very, very lengthy. Okay, let's just go through our exam requirements first, and then we'll call it a day. So firstly, you want to be able to explain the benefits that TNC is able to reap for its home economy as well as for itself. I've gone through this during the first part. Right, explain and discuss the relative impacts of TNCs on their home and their host economies. And lastly, explain the characteristics of TNCs in relation to their benefits, costs, and impacts. So this one I've gone through in the first part of the previous video, actually, okay, my 12A. So for this part, all I really need you to know, okay, for your syllabus is you have to understand, okay, what are the benefits that TNC stands to face, right, when they're actually operating globally, outside of their home country, as well as from there, since they're already operating in another country, what benefits and limitations or costs, okay, drawbacks do they actually bring to that country? And not only that, do they actually stand to bring benefits or possibly drawbacks as well to their own home country? So those are mainly the main gist of this entire lecture that you need to make sure you have a good grip on. And once you have that, okay, I think a lot of it else it's really up to you to go and find certain examples, go and look for statistics, go and look for countries, examples of countries which actually face these issues, and from there it's really just continuing to explain. Right? In this video, I've summed up everything into one nice simple point that really captures the essence of everything. So from here, it's up to you whether you want to branch it out, you want to explain more, you want to explain less, or you want to give more examples. Right? Go ahead and do it. Alright, so that is all I have for this video. Okay, if you have any questions, you can leave it in the comment section below. I will answer them. So just go ahead and throw it in there. If not, if you did enjoy this video, you learned something, okay, be sure to give it a like as well as to subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything, it's free, and you can always change your mind later if you want to. Alright, so that is all I have for this video. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next part. Have a good one and keep studying hard. Bye bye.